Now, the African Union Extraordinary Summit on Terrorism and Unconstitutional Changes of Government has begun in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. The summit takes place from the 25th to the 28th of May 2022. The commencement of the summit coincides with Africa Day, which is observed annually to commemorate the founding of the Organization of African Unity. It was, of course, created on the 25th of May, 1963. The OAU was a precursor of the African Union. Ovigwe Eguegu is a geopolitics and policy analyst at Development Reimagined, an African international affairs consultancy. He joins us now. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. As we mentioned, the sad fact that we are once again sitting down to talk about terrorism, unconstitutional changes on the day of the African Union. But I suppose at the same time, it's a good thing to remind us of the goal that we set ourselves so long ago.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. No, I think it's very important that every year we renew and strengthen our resolve towards the AU Charter and all of the agenda, points in the aspirations in the Agenda 2063 document. So when it comes to the African Union, I think there's a role the African Union can play. Some would argue that it's not playing anywhere near that role with regards to unconstitutional change and even counter-terrorism. But I think within the current structure or within the current arrangement and the AU Charter, a lot of work is happening at the African Union, particularly through all its organs, AUC, the political affairs and peace commission. So if we really want to do more, we might have to revisit exactly what policy provisions and tools and let's say mandates, and sovereign power, if you agree with me, that we have given to the AU. But as it is now, of course, looking at the dynamic on the continent, the African Union can do more. How we're going to go about that, maybe that's what our leaders in Malabo should be discussing, and not necessarily just putting out a statement to condemn and to sanction countries that are deviating from the common African agenda.
I mean, the fact that within the last almost 2 years, there have been something in the region of 5 coups and countless terrorist attacks, what should it tell us in terms about going back to the drawing board? We have quite an ambitious target of silencing the guns, and it's drawing very near.
Well, I think the Silence the Gun initiative by the African Union is very ambitious in the sense that for many decades, in fact, since post-colonial Africa came to be this state, there's hardly a year one country on the continent has not been at war, whether it's civil war or even just sometimes we've even had interstate aggression and tensions, and now we have this transnational threat of terrorism. But if we look exactly at what the underlying causes are, I think we might begin to better understand how we can silence the gun from within the countries as opposed to trying to silence the gun at the AU level. Because what the AU is doing is like you want to treat cholera, right? But rather than treat the water supply that's causing people to fall sick, you go around treating the individual cases, and meanwhile, the water supply that's causing a problem is still there. And for that analogy in Africa, the water supply is the poverty, it's the largely unprofessionalized militaries that we have across the continent. It is the lack of real economic growth to actually catch up to the population, growth. And so many social political problems. In some countries, you have a situation where some segment of the population do not even recognize the states. That a good example would be Mali, for instance. In some other countries, the disgruntlement in the military is because of endemic corruption and lack of economic performance. Guinea Conakry is a good example. In Chad, you have a situation where the constitution is somewhat below the military, or the military decide what the constitution would be. So we have the head of state dies, his son takes over, ignoring what the provisions in the constitution mandates. So it is really the problem at the national level, or is at the national level, that we'll have to start addressing these issues. And that is where the AU is really ineffective, because you could condemn, you can sanction, but you can't really compel these countries to act according to the dictates, even though these countries themselves sign up to those dictates. So what we really need to see is commitment to good governance at the country level, because if you have countries that are well governed, we won't have these problems in the first place. So I think that is what really needs to happen, rather than the AU just preparing speeches for whenever and condemnation proclamation whenever there is a coup. Let the countries know that, or the leaders of these countries commit and up their game in terms of governance, so that these coups are not justifiable in any way, whether it's political issues or economic issues. That is what we need to see, and I think if we can achieve that, we will not be in a position where we'll have coups here and there and all of the problems of terrorism, and drug trafficking and all that.
All right, Ovigwe Eguegu, geopolitics and policy analyst at the Development Reimagined and African International Affairs Consultancy. We're going to leave it there for now.